start a business, or before you even think about starting a business, you need to do your homework. I made a list of 10 things you need to think about, in terms of researching your business. And the first one, and I mentioned it before, is why. Why start this business? Why does the world need your product? Because you think it's a great idea, it doesn't mean that anybody else does. It doesn't mean that there are some great ideas that the world doesn't really need, or somebody's not going to pay for. And it might be something where you have a huge amount of passion, huge amount of skill, but there's no real market for it. It's always going to be a hobby or best a lifestyle business. So keep asking yourself why. That's the first question. Second question is, how big is the market opportunity? What is the size of the prize? And I know one friend of mine who started a business, became quite big. It was probably doing £10 million, $15 million a year of revenue, but they thought the market was much bigger, and they raised quite a lot of cash, and the investors couldn't really get the return they wanted because the market size limited how big that business would get, despite their best efforts. So think about the size of the prize, how big the market is, how big your business could get, and that may dictate how much capital, how much energy, how much resource you put into it. The third one is, and this is fundamental, is who is your customer? And work out if there's a range of customers, customer personas, especially if they're consumers, and how over the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years is that persona going to change in terms of what those customers demand, what are their needs and wants. If it's a B2B customer, how is that industry going to change over time? How can you effect change in that industry? So you really need to understand your customer, because if you don't understand your customer, you can't get your product right, and you'll find it very hard to get product market fit. You'll find it very hard to have effective marketing. The fourth one is price. Well, what is the right price? This might change over time, but my advice is it's easier to bring your price down from where you thought it should be and discount it than it is to put your price up. But look at your market, do your research on the economics of your business, the economics generally, to the macroeconomics in terms of what is the right price point for your product. And having a low price and a low margin is always a good plan. You've got to think about how can you maintain the price by adding value, or having better service, or having more of a digitally based business, or a platform even where the margin can be enormous in software, people think automatically, but if it's costing you a fortune to market that, you'll find that your bottom line margin isn't quite what you thought it was going to be. You need to get your pricing right. So you know your price. The next one is, number 5, is about what's the cost of creating that product. And initially you might be starting with a minimum viable product or a prototype, or have quite a simple service if it's a service, but you need to understand what it costs you to deliver that service or that good. And if you realise that it costs you more to deliver it than you can sell it for, you haven't got a business. So it's incredibly important to work that out very early on. What that gives you, number 6, is your margin. Your margin's critical. There's no point in building a business plan where your margin is 5% forever, because this is your gross profit margin. This is your revenue less what it costs to put that product or service in your customer's hands. That's your gross profit margin. And 7, research the competition, not just direct competition, indirect competition. Businesses that are similar to yours, who could come into your market. And in very dynamic markets these days, and the world changes very, very quickly, you've got to try and think ahead. What will the competition look like in 5 or 10 years? The issue now is, the very clever disruptors that arrived on the scene in 5 years became multi-billion-pound businesses. 8 is go to market. How do you get to market? Yes, you can put a team together. Yes, you may be able to raise some money. You may have a great business plan. But if you can't go to market, if you can't sell, a lot of entrepreneurs forget this because it can be quite painful and quite a difficult process. You need to have a go-to-market strategy, a marketing strategy, understand your customers, and be able to sell. Business is about selling. If you can't sell at the right margin and have the right sort of costs below that in your P&L, your expenses, your overhead, to create a profit at the bottom, in the long term you won't have a business. It doesn't matter what you do. Number 9, research your regulatory requirements. If you're making food, you need to make sure you tick all the boxes, because otherwise you won't be in business for very, very long. And regulation, depending on what business you're in, what sector you're in, there's more and more of it. So make sure you understand the regulatory framework and compliance and security requirements, because especially in security, there's more and more regulation about it. And number 10, the final one, is once you've done all your research, you use simple tools like a SWOT analysis. So that's about putting your strengths, weaknesses, the opportunities and the threats down on paper, like a matrix. And if your weaknesses and your threats outweigh the strengths and the opportunities, you might need to think about your business model again. But there are lots of very simple sort of business tools that you can research, put together, and it could be pros and cons essentially, and work out, once you've done all the research that I'm suggesting, is whether the business you thought you were going to start is the one you should be starting, or whether you need to think about changing it, amending it, or finding ways in improving the margin, your ability to create revenue, your ability to find a bigger opportunity so you can build a bigger business. So lots of different variables, but do your research.